The funeral of Mr. T.E. Shaw, formerly Colonel Lawrence, will take place at Morton Church, Dorset.
Known at the time of his death as Thomas Edward Shaw, better known to the rest of the world as Colonel Lawrence of Arabia.
I started becoming a bit of a Lawrence obsessive when I was about 9 years old, and I went into St Martin's Church in Wareham, and I saw Lawrence's effigy, and there was an old guy there cleaning the effigy, and I started asking questions. And one of the questions I asked, after he told me he died after a motorcycle crash, I said, "Was it an accident?" And he looked at me and narrowed his eyes and said, "Well, not all accidents are accidents," and that's kind of where it started. I spent a lot of time in my childhood down in Dorset. On top of that, started to read a lot more, visit the Clouds Hill and his other haunts. And out of it, when I was about 10 years ago, became a screenplay. And it was originally going to be a radio play, but eventually it became a screenplay which was ready to film.
He was known as Lawrence of Arabia. He died in 1935 in a motorcycle crash on a road near Bovington.
Was it an accident?
Sometimes, not all accidents are accidental.
Was it an accident, or was it an assassination? Was it a suicide? Well, the key pieces of information is one, the bike has evidence, lots of evidence of being hit on its petrol tank, on its headlight, handlebars, on its exhaust. So it was hit by something, and black paint was found on the bike. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we have the evidence of a gentleman called Corporal Ernest Catchpole, who actually saw the accident and saw the black car that that passed Lawrence on his bike, and he thought that the car had, if you like, interfered with the bike very shortly after the bike went out of control and, of course, crashed into the back of the boys, and Lawrence was fatally injured. Whether it was an accident, I have a theory of how it could have been an accident and why those circumstances were as they were. You know, the owner of the black car never came forward. Somebody did come forward in 1985, but the car was actually registered in 1936, so it couldn't have been their car. The assassination simply was. Lawrence was involved with an awful lot of things. He was, for example, working with Churchill on possibly starting to form a home guard. He was working with Churchill on possibly shaking up the Secret Service. He was talking with the Arabs. He was talking with Mosley and the Black Shirts. So there are lots of reasons why the establishment would not be happy with that situation and why they might want to get rid of him. And of course, in the film, we look at some of those things.
It's said that he was described as a dangerous man. Why on earth would that be, though? Would he really be a dangerous man?
Well, Lawrence was, for want of a better couple of words, a loose cannon, and he would do his own thing. He for example, caused a huge stir when he worked with an MP to try and stop the army shooting shooting soldiers for desertion during the First World War. But it was him that pushed that forward. So normally, he was the sort of person that would not think about the consequences of doing something. He would just be doing what he thought was right. He was a very forthright, an outspoken man, and he didn't like the fame of that followed him, and he tried to shake off the Lawrence of Arabia epithet. and it kind of followed him around. And of course he had run-ins with reporters, and sometimes I kind of compare his relationship with the press with Princess Diana. And they had very, very similar endings, of course. After a crash, very suspicious circumstances, not liked by the establishment. So, very, very interesting aspect.
Since you've been away, England's changed, and the bridges you burnt as a youth have created dangerous enemies.
He is still stirring up the Arabs. He's pissing off the Jews in Palestine and buggering up our control of the Suez Canal. Now, if somebody does not annihilate this little shit, then I will!
The film kind of starts a couple of years before Lawrence's death. He's coming up to the end of his career in the forces, in the military, and Churchill comes to see him and suggests that his talents will be wasted if he just retired. So that's he's has to think very carefully about whether he wants to what he wants to do. He has relationships, friendships with many famous people: George Bernard Shaw, Siegfried Sassoon, E.M. Forster, one of which is Florence Hardy. So we examine that. And of course he also suffered from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and we look at that as well. So he's kind of wondering whether he should take a step forward into the limelight again, or whether he just wants to forget things. And he starts to build a friendship with Henry Williamson, who wrote Tarka the Otter, and who is involved with Mosley and the Black Shirts, and essentially it all gets very, very mixed up, and things transpire.
There's been a play, there's been a film, both dealing with Lawrence after Arabia. What makes your new film different?
I think the play that was the Howard Brenton one is quite tight, and it's all about a lot of it is about his relationship with Charlotte and George Bernard Shaw. Here, and that play didn't really deal with his accident and the motors, his end, if you like. And what the film tries to do is not only look at those last couple of years of his life and where he got to, how he came up and ended up on that road on the 13th of May 1935, but what was the aftermath of that. For example, it's not well known that one of the doctors that tended to him was an Australian called Sir Hugh Cairns, and Cairns actually pushed the military after examining the damage to Lawrence to use helmets for dispatch riders, and that was the beginning of compulsory crash helmets for motorbikes. So there was something positive came of his of the accident. So yeah, the film looks at his life and his relationships in those last couple of years, and then looks at the aftermath of the crash, the inquest, the funeral. We recreate the inquest, we recreate the funeral, using for the inquest the original documents. It allows the viewer, if you like, to make up their own mind, because we show the accident and we show it as an accident, and then we show the same thing, if you like, as an assassination. So it allows the viewer to go, maybe, but I still believe it was an accident. It's got a little Easter egg at the end as well, if people stay after the credits, and so it offers another possible solution. So.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Right.
Be careful there, Ned. He's a cunning old fox, a user.
Well, now we have to decide what to do and how to do it.
He is talking to the Black Shirts. They're setting him up to meet Hitler next month.
Henry Williamson and Mosley.
Just so.
It's said that Lawrence was a haunted man, and you wrote the screenplay. You got inside the man's soul to write the screenplay. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he spent an awful lot of time trying to hide from that Lawrence of Arabia epithet. He was made famous by, as a this is before the time of cinema really, but he was made a matinee idol by the Lowell Thomas slideshows that became very popular following the First World War, and I think he wanted to forget that and do something else, which is why he, tried to join. Well, he changed his name to T.E. Shaw using his friend Bernard Shaw's second name. He tried to change his name to Ross. He tried to melt into the background. He had a very strained relationship, as I said, with reporters, but sometimes used those reporters to get certain issues in front of people, or to put them off what he was actually doing. He, for example, was in India for a few years and was spying. I mean, I tend to believe that he was also a spy. He was certainly. He wrote the book on what I would call guerrilla warfare, and the SAS use that to this day. And I think he was also a spy. Really? Yeah. I think he was sucked into things occasionally. The situation with the black shirts was interesting because they wanted to know what Mosley was up to. There were meetings being arranged with Hitler. There was a possibility that Lawrence himself would meet Hitler, and it was possible that was simply to infiltrate. So, typical spycraft. So, was that the case? I don't know.
Let's talk about the making of the film and the practicalities of it. Do you use local locations?
Yes. The film was pretty much all filmed in Dorset. There was a beach scene that we used that was actually filmed in France because the weather was better at the time in October. But other than that, it's all the locations that you would know Lawrence for. We filmed at Clouds Hill. We filmed at Morton Church, inside and outside. We filmed at his graveside. We couldn't film the accident where the accident actually happened because the road has changed significantly, and unfortunately there's an awful lot of big tanks around that area, so we filmed it elsewhere on a quieter piece of road which was very similar to that piece of road at the time. It's all Dorset based. The cast and crew, what I call the crew, there was only a tiny number. There was only 5 or 6 of us really in the crew. We increased that, tooled up when we needed a few more people for what I call the extra scenes, but they're all pretty much Dorset based. The cast were all Dorset based except for the names. Brian Cox, Nicole Ansari Cox, who plays Sarah, who's Brian's wife. We've got Michael Maloney, who's been in The Crown, and Christine Keeler, and we've got Hugh Fraser, the wonderful Hugh Fraser, lovely man. He's obviously been in Sharp playing Wellington, and he's Hastings in Poirot, so lovely man.
We were looking forward to seeing it in May this year in Swanage, in Wareham and beyond, and then the coronavirus pandemic struck. Has that been a disaster for you? What's going to happen now?
No, I mean, luckily as the producer, the only person that's financially damaged by not by putting off the premiere is me. So I felt, and talking with my crew, we felt that it was very, very important for this film to get a proper release. You'll have known that there's been a number of big films that have been released actually directly to streaming, and we felt that because of the support that Dorset has given us, because of the work that people have put into this, the support we've had from many people, that it should get a proper premiere. So we try to rearrange dates for September, October. A lot of the venues just will not be open at that time. There's not enough confidence. So we've been working over the last few weeks to rearrange all the dates for March 2021. We've now got a premiere, which is great news, rearranged for the 5th of March in Poole, for which at Lighthouse Poole, for which there are tickets still available if people want to go. And then there are special screenings throughout Dorset where you get to meet me if you want to, and we'll do a director's Q&A after the screening at the Rex in Wareham, the Moleham in Swanage, the Art Centre Shaftesbury, the Exchange in Sturmington, all across Dorset, and a few in Hampshire as well. Then I'm taking it on the road in a few places in the UK.
If you bought tickets for the original screening,
yes,
the director's cut and the Q&As, can you still use them?
Oh yes, absolutely. All the if you bought tickets, as many people have done so, for the premiere or any other screening, they will be valid for the new date. So don't worry about that. If you're any doubt, do contact the venues. Some of those venues are not up to speed, if you like, at the moment. I've got 28 dates, and I've got 16 nailed down, and another 12 which I'm still working on, because some of those venues are not yet up and running, if you like, after the COVID issues, but they will be valid.
Is this your first major feature?
Yeah, this is my first feature film. I feel like I've been working on the script since I was a boy, but I've done a lot of. I'm a frustrated actor that I should have gone to drama school, but I couldn't fund myself, so I ended up getting a computer science degree, or computer science qualification, so that I ended up being essentially an interim computer guy. I did a lot of work on project management, so trying to manage a project like this is grist to the mill for me. But I did a lot of, in my spare time, if you like, I spent a lot of time in hotels away from home, so I did a lot of writing. I've written novels, I've written a biography about Vangelis, and the screenplay has kind of grown like a Tolkien novel over the years.
Have you directed before?
I've done theatre direction. Again, I've done a little bit of theatre direction. Last thing I did was a bio theatre piece about Spike Milligan, which I wrote and directed. That was a few years back now. But the technical side of film direction is of course very different, and I relied heavily on my director of photography, a guy called Simon Lawrence, who. There must be a relationship there, but we'll figure it out one day. Simon, who was great, and then we had Jenny Veal, who runs a costume place over in Dorchester. Kirsten Starr, who's our hair and makeup. So all of those people are experienced, and they really handheld me. So directing people was not a problem for me, but directing and the technical side of filmmaking, I needed to learn. But the film's done great. We've had lots of awards now. We've won Best Picture in Las Vegas, in Los Angeles, in places like Czech Republic, out in India at various film festivals. It's won Best Screenplay, it's won an Audience Award, so it's getting a good head of steam on it in terms of people enjoying it, so I'm really pleased.
Did you feel that you had big shoes to fill? David Lean, following in the wake of David Lean.
Yeah. David Lean is one of my kind of favourite directors, and if you come and see the film, you'll notice we've borrowed some of David Lean's shots and lines. But another director that I love is Ridley Scott. I'm a great Ridley Scott fan. So and he's sometimes known as the Prince of Darkness, and we use some of his techniques as well. So it's big shoes to fill with those guys.
And the thought struck me that people might, who of my age group anyway, who have seen Lawrence of Arabia many times, did win, was it 7 or 8 Oscars? I can't remember how many. They will be constantly comparing that to yours. Were you worried about that?
When you've got a film like Lawrence of Arabia, which is constantly voted one of the best films ever made, it's Steven Spielberg's favourite film. Yeah, it's a huge mountain to climb, but we just kind of one of the things we had to work with, frankly, work against, if you like, is the image of Lawrence of Arabia. When people think of him, they tend to think of Peter O'Toole, this blonde-haired character who's 6 foot plus. Lawrence was, of course, 5'5" and mousy-haired and had a very strange face. So with Tom Barber Duffy, who plays Lawrence, we've actually taken a revisionist approach. He's quite a modern, what I would call a modern Lawrence. He's a very intense, as Lawrence was, but he's more, I think, somebody that you recognise from today. I think it's very wrong to simply look at Lawrence of Arabia and Peter O'Toole and say, that was T.E. Lawrence. No, he's playing a hero. He's playing a very different character, I think.
It's also, you've got Rick Wakeman
Rick
working behind the scenes.
We've got the soundtrack. Most of the soundtrack's written by a guy called Clifford White, who's won a number of awards. He's a cracking musician, but we wanted some symphonic and grand music. So I reached out, having met him before, to Rick. Rick agreed, and he's done some arrangements of the hymn "Jesus, Lover of My Soul" to the tune Aberystwyth. So we've got a kind of choral symphonic version, and we've also got a beautiful, sublime piano version from him, and we've got an a cappella choir version. So we've also got a great. If you go onto the website, you can see some of these trailers and hear some of this music. We've got a lovely end title song called After Arabia, which is sung by performed by a guy called Chris Thompson, who was on the original Jeff Wayne War of the Worlds album. He's worked with Sarah Brightman and Alan Parsons, and he's the lead singer of Manfred Mann. So he's great voice. And the guy that I wrote the lyrics, and the music was written by Bruce Woolley, Chris Thompson, and Dan and Chris Woolley, who are Bruce's mates. Bruce used to be, well, I keep saying used to be, he was what I would call a Buggles acolyte, shall we say. He co-wrote Video Killed the Radio Star, for example. So Bruce is a great producer.
So it's in the can. We're just waiting with bated breath for it to now come out. It'll be next year now in March, and eventually it will be coming to Swanage, won't it?
Yes. I can't remember the exact date. It's sometime in March 2021 for Swanage at the moment. If you miss the special screening where you get me as well with the director's Q&A, we're going to be doing some general release screenings probably the middle of April, but I hope you can come along to the Marlin when it's in Swanage, and of course any other venue around in and around Dorset. It'd be great to see you.
What next?
Yes, there were a number of projects that we were trying to, what I call offshoot projects. So we are trying to finish a making of video. We want to do a proper music for After Arabia because it deserves it. I'm also trying to finish the screenplay of a documentary which looks at Lawrence's death as a cold case, if you like. So we start to it allows us to look at some of the things that we couldn't go into in a what I call a theatrical film, but in a documentary we can do. So we're working on that. Well, hopefully that will accompany the film when it eventually goes to DVD and to TV. After that, there's a story that I'm working on based in Victorian Dorset, and I'd like to sort of get that to the screen. That's that's synopsis at the moment, screenplay on the way, hopefully.
Fantastic. Mark Griffin, director, producer of Lawrence After Arabia. Thank you very much indeed for talking to me and Purbeck Coast FM.
So, another war is inevitable.
It is written, my old friend.
Nothing is written, lest it be so.